Okay, so we are going to paint some cactus using acrylics this week. We are zooming in and painting some colorful details. We're not worried about making a wide landscape that you can see out in the distance. This helps us to focus effectively on one object and give it detail and variety. Acrylics are permanent on clothing and carpet, so wear an apron and old clothes. I use a palette pad instead of palette with circle wells because I do a lot of large area color mixing and spraying. Remember, don't walk away from your brush without putting it back in water. It will ruin your brush in less than 30 minutes. I keep a fine mist spray bottle with me. I have a variety of flat and round brushes, but I mostly stuck to large round brushes and a few liner brushes, which are long and very skinny. And I also had a cup for dirty water and a rinsing cup. I always use 2 cups every time I paint. If you're using a large canvas, you can paint on an easel, but we're going to paint laying flat, and this was actually painted on a canvas paper. So that means it's a canvas inside of a pad that you can buy. Most children are fine to just use a watercolor paper, though. That would be less expensive. In the past, I've sold paintings on this style of canvas paper because it can be framed. Also, you can frame any kind of paper, but this just lays really nicely and gives it more of a canvas look. So Google or get on Pinterest with your parents and find images that you can reference. You don't have to make yours look like mine at all. I'm just showing you my technique, and this is a very quick version of it, of what I actually sell, but you can just look up cactus photos and get a better idea than searching for cactus paintings, because you don't want to copy somebody else's painting. You want to reference a real cactus. So remember, still like an artist, meaning take a few good ideas but don't copy their work. Even if it's photography, you still want to put your spin on it, make it your own. Change the shape, change the color, put you into it. And that's hard to do sometimes if you're looking at another painting. So that's why a photo might be a better idea. It's a habit you might want to just get into when you're young, so that when you grow up, you can sell your own art and you can feel good about taking credit for it. So still like an artist, and look for things you can take and things that you can leave behind. The idea for this painting comes from a series I started last spring. It's the foreground of the landscape series. That was, you saw a still photo of that in the very beginning quickly. This is a fun painting that came from adding highlights and neons and unexpected places, and I gave it the name Candy Desert. So I've done a few of these Candy Desert pictures. So this is just a fun little quick version of the cactuses I put in the front. They are, I used about 6 different reference photos to come up with this idea. So I was able to feel good about selling it because I knew it was mine and I wasn't copying. One painting had more blues, and you'll see at the end, and the other had a lot of pink. My next one, who knows what we'll have. You get to choose a color that you would, for the background, that would play nicely with pastel colors and neons in the foreground. Examples of colors I would recommend, that I would not recommend, I'm sorry, are like dark green. Don't use a dark green background, or maroon or brown, or most muted earthy tones. Some could work and be effective, but try putting some neons and pastel colors around a background color that you might like. Look around your home, put them together and see if they feel good to you. Color affects me a lot, and if I have colors around me that I don't like, it makes me really unhappy. So we start off with like a lighter color than the background, and we sketch out light shapes with our paint. We don't need a pencil, but if it makes you feel better, go for it. I've done this painting several times, so I don't have to think, I just paint, which kind of shows in this painting. I really wasn't thinking, and it is a little messy, but you know, the look of this, I wouldn't call it abstract because you can tell what I'm trying to paint here. It's not just like splats of color. So I would say it's more impressionistic. Impressionistic means, like, impressionism is you get the impression that these are cactuses, but it is no way, shape, or form supposed to look real. And that's the fun of it, because we've talked about this. It would be, if I wanted a real cactus, I would take a photo of a real cactus. And you know, and it's cool if you want to realistically paint a cactus, but that's not the mood or the vibe I'm going for this painting. I want this to be something you can walk by and you don't have to think about it. You just know that your eyes love these colors and you love how they're put together, and that's really the idea for this. And this painting is really about just having fun. It is not about taking it serious at all. So I know I'm really behind in what I'm saying compared to what's happening in this picture, but it's fine. You need to wait until your background is totally dry. If you paint a layer that is too thick, that it's not too thick, maybe it can dry in 10 minutes, but you can use a blow dryer to speed things up. Make sure you cover the entire paper. You don't have to make the color totally solid. You can add white. Well, I mean, you do want it solid in the sense that you want on your whole paper. You do want it completely painted, but you don't have to have it all that same color tone, as in you can have some white mixed into it and have lighter areas maybe towards the top or the bottom. I don't recommend using more than one color for this because you want your cactus to have tons of color within each I don't want to call it a petal. I don't know what the parts of the cactus are called. So you want to make them pop. So your background needs to be very well contrasted, being that it's just a solid tone. So use all the pastels and neon colors that you can. Any that you can think of. I used them all in this. Don't just stick to your favorite colors. Neons are bright and happy colors, and pastels are soft, happy colors like Easter. The neon spices up the pastel so it doesn't look like a baby's nursery or stay looking like Easter, because that's not really what I wanted to go with for this. Maybe that's cool in another painting, but not this one. This painting should feel like a hot summer sunset. This is like, I just get in the mood to paint my toes neon orange or neon pink or something like that at this time of year. And it's September, it's the last of summer. I'm just pulling the last I can before fall hits, and so I'm enjoying having these pops of crazy color, and I feel like that's my personality that only comes out at this time of year. The rest of the year I like different colors. This is the time of year that even my house gets some little neons and some fun things. This painting should not happen in one day. Um, I I took about an hour, I believe, maybe two. I don't remember, to get this done. And that's with me being, you know, a 36-year-old experienced artist, and I've done this painting a few times, and it's still, you know, pretty messy. I don't think that a child should try to do this in one day. I don't think that's a good idea. I think that would really stress you out. Um, so it takes time to get the right amount of detail, and you may be new to acrylics, so plan on doing this for a few days. Maybe for like an hour at a time is good. Um, I rarely ever used acrylics in my children's art class in the past. In fact, I can only think of maybe 2 times that I ever did. And that is because it, the idea of permanent paint really scared me. And so we'd always use tempera paint so we didn't risk permanent mess. But I'm kind of done thinking that way, and I don't want to limit the talent that can be brought out with the proper supplies. So tempera paint is washable, but it's not good for a child who's seriously capable of demonstrating great techniques. You just simply cannot paint well with tempera paint. It is fantastic until you're about 7 years old for most kids, and then most of the kids are ready for something better. Most of my students currently are 8 to 11 years old, but they do range from 5 to 16. So I have all kinds of talent in my classes. Make sure that you um, arrange the shapes on the paper to give it a variety and to give it interest. Have them face different directions so the highlights and the shadows will hit them differently. Don't line them up and don't like line them up in a line. We talked about that last week. Like you didn't want your sea creatures to be lined up in a line across the bottom. So this is kind of building on last week's lesson. It was a lesson and pretty much in the subject matter being in the foreground. And some of you may have painted some creatures in the background. This one all focuses on, boom, right in your face, close up. So you really don't want to line them up. You want to make sure you have layers and that they are facing in different directions. Once you have basic shapes put in, it's time to think about giving them each different color tones that all have a unified vibe, meaning that they play nicely together and your eyes are happy. These would all be, like I said, pastel colors. To make a pastel color, you literally just mostly need to have like white inside of a very true tone color. So like white inside of pink, white inside of purple, white inside of like aqua, which isn't actually a true tone color, but you don't want a muted earthy color for this is kind of what I'm trying to say. That's just not what this painting is. We will have plenty of those in the future. So remember, we are not trying to make a realistic painting, but it's not abstract, so don't get carried away with it just being a free-for-all mess. Like, there is a rhyme and reason to it. There is some thought put into it. You want your highlights to make sense and your shadows to make sense, but not all of them need to be or should be correct. So it's not like all of my highlights and shadows really were methodically placed. It was kind of a feeling more than me really thinking about exactly where the sun should be. So like I said, I have a theory that if you want a photorealistic piece of art, then take a photo. If you want a painting that looks more exciting than reality and makes you so happy that every time you see it and you walk by it, that you're just full of joy, then sometimes just paint it and let it be a painting. I'm a photographer and I love photos of people. I am not a landscape photographer and I enjoy just painted landscapes. I don't really care to ever hang a photo of a landscape in my home. That is just me. And there are so many people that disagree with that and feel differently. So that's just me. I enjoy painting people too, but I do, when I paint people, I can absolutely paint their face with them looking dead on to you, like looking right at you. But it actually feels better to me to have them looking away. It feels more impersonal, like anybody can relate to the picture, but if they're looking right at you, it's almost like, why didn't you just take a photo? So that's how I think of it. So I want you to think, as I talk to you about this and in the future, what do you feel about that? And what's your opinion? And I hope it's not the same as me. I hope you have a different opinion. I hope that you all figure out what you love and what kind of art you enjoy. I did feel like I needed to decide where my light source was. And so you can put a little pencil point somewhere if you wanted to keep in mind kind of where your light is and think about where the light should be coming in. It's kind of a cause and effect. If you have a highlight here, then where would your shadow lie? I add colors that are different than my base. The base would be what I made that shape out of, like that more aqua color, based on the lighter highlighted areas and the darker shadows. So if I have one color on one side of it, I might move the other color to the other side. Like I said, I didn't think too seriously about it in this one. So now we add some bits of neon in unexpected places that are intentional. And that means that you can make some stripes and some blobs of neon mess. Well, let me take that back. Maybe you don't want to just put it on there like a mess. You want to think about it. You want to make a strategy of what would make the opposite pop. So what would make the painting look like a piece of candy that would make it look exciting for you? So it's like there's a borderline here between feeling it and plopping down some paint. And there were times where I felt like I really was just oh, you know what? I have pink on my brush, so I'm going to put some pink here, and then I'm going to put some pink here. And so I felt like a blobby mess. And then there were other times where I said, okay, slow down. That actually doesn't make sense. You have to think a little bit more. And it's funny because you can almost tell if an artist is thinking, like overthinking it, or if they're not thinking enough in their painting. And that comes with experience too. I think when you're younger and you're less experienced, you need to think a little bit more about it. And as you get older and you've done it more, you get to be a little more free with your painting still making some sense. I don't know if that makes sense to you. But next, we add lots of dots and spikes. These are the details. Like I said, there weren't any real details up to this point, but now there are. This tiny detail is important because you may choose to take a whole day just for this. So line up your dots and spikes in whichever way they go on each part of the plant. Keep them moving in that pattern as best as you can with the same distance and size. Don't get bored and discouraged that it's taking a lot of time. Put your brush in the water, play outside, stretch, get some water, and get back to work. It will be worth it. So after that, you can see I'm going in here and I'm highlighting the spikes in crazy neons. And I think at some point in here, I start using like bright orange because I hadn't used orange in here. And I told you, I use all the neons. You might even have like a third layer of paint over some of your spikes to make it pop like it's hitting the sun. So last we're going to go through the whole painting and we're going to see if we're missing any highlights, particularly on our spikes. And then you don't forget, always sign your name and take a picture. It's best to stand above your painting and shoot looking down. So lay it on the floor, stand above it, take your camera or your phone and shoot at it looking down. Make sure you edit it on your phone to look the same as it does in real life. Your phone is going to lose a lot of the color and it will need help boosting the colors back. Don't make it look fake. Match what you see and share it. Share it with other people. So a little tip I have for you, because I had to edit the video to be more true to the color that it was because it recorded with my phone very faded. And when I took a photo, it looked very faded. So a little tip I have for you is you want to up your saturation just a little bit. That does not mean that you added fake colors that aren't there. That means you, like, think of a sponge. When you pick up a sponge, it is dry and it is hollow. Then you put it in water and it becomes saturated. It fills up with water. I know it's a strange analogy, but that's what, when we saturate a color, and you will see that setting in your editing tools on any editing tools of your Photoshop or your phone, the most basic of editing tools for your photos, and I'm sure most of you have played with something, and you should. Saturation is always going to be on there. And you want to bump it up just a little bit. Now, don't go overboard. Maybe I did go overboard just a tiny bit, but if you saw this painting in real life, truly it really is that saturated, but I feel like the things around it, like my paints there on the table, those look a little more saturated than they would have been in real life, so it's kind of interesting. So this neon, I really wanted to show it justice, like how bold and beautiful these colors really are. So I was able to do that in iMovie for the overall, and with my photo, I just used my phone for that. So anyway, so do that with your saturation. If your phone has the ability when you're editing to change the black point, by sliding the black point over to the right a little bit, that's kind of one that I'm a little bit new to using because it wasn't, black point wasn't something I used in Photoshop, but it's something that I noticed on my phone, and it really enhanced my pictures without over contrasting. So I used to contrast my images a lot more, and that didn't give me the look I wanted. So don't overexpose, don't over lighten, don't change your highlights and your shadows too much. Those actually work better when you're working with people pictures. But when you're doing your art, your black point and your saturation and your vibrancy, that's the other one. Those really are helpful to make it look more like real life. And remember, the goal is to make it look realistic, not to make it look fake, like a painting that you didn't actually make. So another tip I could give you for when you're editing your art is to check your tone and your warmth. And they're kind of similar on my phone, but they do different things. A lot of the times my phone will take pictures of my art and make them look too warm and give them a pinky orange cast. And I don't like that, or like a yellow cast. And so I slide it over and try to give it more of a cool, I don't want to call it a blue because I don't want that. There's just this happy, sweet spot that you have to play with. Again, look at your picture in real life, look at your phone, and do not stop until you feel like it's just exactly spot on. You shouldn't have to sharpen your image because you should be able to steady yourself enough to get a very clear, sharp image, especially on most current iPhones. So if you have one of those, fantastic. If you don't, maybe you could borrow a family member's to take pictures of your art because they really do a great job. We're really blessed these days to be able to have phones that do such a fantastic job taking pictures of our artwork and even each other. So I always have to think about my paintings in the sense of a photographer too, because I am more of a photographer than I even am a painter. And I know more about that, and so that's what I think about. And I love that all the years of photography trained my brain so that when I was younger and I had time to paint and draw and everything, I I saw the world differently. I didn't have any reference pictures. We didn't have Google Images. We didn't have Pinterest. You are so blessed that you can go and look up anything and figure out how to draw it, how to paint it. I didn't have that. I literally learned to draw in 5th grade from VHS tapes. If you even know what that is, they're covers, Disney covers, like 101 Dalmatians and The Lion King and Little Mermaid. I looked at these microscopic, tiny, tiny little pictures, and I would look at those because I didn't have a bunch of reference pictures. I didn't even live in a larger town to go to the library super often. And so I didn't even have a bunch of books to look at, and they didn't have really fantastic illustrations back then. And so you are so blessed to have exposure to, it's like you're feeding your brain constantly with absolutely beautiful images, and don't take that for granted. Realize what you have and draw and paint all the time and utilize these beautiful colors that they have made for you that I didn't have access to as a kid, and so many different supplies. If you are struggling with what to spend money on, buy art supplies. You won't ever regret it. I hope you enjoy.